Welcome to the Hudson School District podcast series, Educationally Speaking. November 5th, Operational Referendum. What's that? Recently, the Hudson Board of Education took action to put a $5 million operational referendum on the November 5th ballot. Today, Superintendent Nick Ouellette is here to talk about the operational referendum. Dr. Ouellette, can you start us off by giving us some background? Why an operational referendum now?
Absolutely. So as we are moving forward, we've been trying to keep track of our finances and doing budget projections as we're looking at different things, and we're starting to project out over the next 4 years, 5 years, some pretty significant deficits. And those significant deficits are a result of state funding not keeping up with our needs and inflation. Actually, after 2009, they were no longer tied to inflation, and so school districts were not getting increases tied to inflation. If we would have been getting those increases, we actually would be sitting in a position where we wouldn't be going to referendum. And since the legislature has kind of fallen behind in funding public education in schools across the state, if you look, almost 80%, or actually I think over 80% of school districts in the state are now using operational referendums to make ends meet because our revenues have not kept up with inflation. As we started we've been doing budget projections over the last couple of years, and as we've kind of looked at things, because things have been, inflationary increases have not been had by the school district, and then on top of that, we have a compounding issue with our student enrollment is going down. We kind of have this perfect financial storm that's going on. And so what we're needing to do is we're projecting over the next 4 years having deficit budgets over the next 4 years. And the highest deficit gets as high as $7.5 million in the next 4 years, in 2029, I believe it is. So this current fiscal year that we're in right now, the 24-25 school year, we're projecting about a $500,000 deficit. Next year, the year after, it starts to jump into the millions and continues to climb. And so in order to try to keep those deficits at bay, we are going to need some help on the revenue side, and I'm going to talk in a little bit about some of the things that we've done on the expenditure side to try to get our budgets in line as well.
You mentioned student enrollment going down slightly. Do you have a reason why?
Yep.
Are students leaving the district?
Absolutely. So absolutely, they're not leaving the district. What's happening is we are bringing in kindergarten classes. For example, our kindergarten class this year is about 302. We graduated a senior class of 445. So you have a deficit of about 150 students just from that. When we've looked at our student enrollment data over the last 15 years, what we're finding is we are capturing the same number of students that live within our attendance boundary as we had before, as far as the same percentage. There's just fewer school-aged kids that live within our attendance boundaries. And so it's not as though there's a mass exodus to other districts or to private schools or to homeschool. We're capturing at the same rate. It's just there are fewer kids that live within our attendance boundaries attending the Hudson School District.
How would the school district use the operational funds?
Well, that's a great question, because a lot of times we have referendums based to build buildings, and so you can see specifically how those funds are being used. But with operational funds, it really is we'd be spending the money on our regular ongoing needs. So one of our biggest needs is staffing. About 80% of our budget goes to staffing, and so this would be to be able to attract and retain quality staff to work with our kids in our community. So just maintaining staffing levels, maintaining the ability to compensate those staff members as well. But we also have additional rising costs, which is maintenance on our facilities. We have increasing costs as it relates to utilities and other items that come up. So really it is the ongoing operations of the district that this money would be used to continue to keep us going.
Back in April of 2023, the community supported a capital improvement referendum, but did not support an operational referendum at that time. The school district surveyed the community, and the community was clear about their concerns and what they needed to see from the district before they would support an operational referendum. What actions have been taken by the district to address these community concerns?
I'm glad you brought that up, Tracy. So we did, after it didn't pass, and it was a very narrow margin, but it did not pass the operational referendum. What we heard from folks is we'd like you to first start doing some cost-cutting measures before you ask us for help on the revenue side. And so since that referendum did not pass, we've cut about $1.9 million worth of staffing out of our budget, about $900,000 last year, and then going into this year, we cut about another $1 million out of our budget. So we've reduced one of our biggest expenses that way. In addition, they asked us to take a look at some of our district properties that we own, and are there some that we could potentially get rid of and not own them any longer. So since then, for example, the UU property that often gets brought up, which is about a 100-acre property off of UU, we did put that up for sale. It does have, it is under contract right now, and we hope to close on that property very shortly. So we are checking that off the list. Additionally, people asked, could we move, since we do have some open space in our buildings, could we move the district office operations out of the district office and into one of the buildings? So we are doing that next summer, in summer of 25. The district office will be moving over to the middle school, into a space over there, and this building itself right now is for sale right now. So trying to jettison some of those things, and then we'll continue to look at ways to become more efficient and operate more efficiently, both with our buildings and with our staffing. But we're at a point now where we can't just do it on the expenditure side without having pretty large impacts to kids and community. We need some help on the revenue side.
So we know the question people are wondering: how would this operational referendum impact their taxes?
That's another great question. And, we've estimated the mill rate increase for this operational referendum being at about 4 cents per thousand. So to give you an idea, is if you had $100,000 per $100,000, we try to use that number, even though people don't usually have $100,000 homes anymore in Hudson. It's about $4 increase on property taxes per 100,000. So a more realistic number is a $500,000 home or a $500,000 home. So we would say that this referendum could cost about $20 a year on your property taxes, and that's if all things stay the same. If your property value doesn't go up, and if the state aid does what it needs to do, and the county doesn't raise your taxes, and everybody else. But from the school portion, we would say this is going to cost somebody with a $500,000 home, if they would say yes to this, it's about $20 additional on their property taxes for this referendum.
What level of confidence does the board and administration have that the school district won't just turn around and ask for more money in a couple of years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We don't have a crystal ball. However, we do believe that this ask should set us up for quite a few years. We believe at least another 5 years before we have to ask for any additional funding moving forward. But again, that's tough to say for sure, because that's 2 legislative biennium budgets that would have to be passed, and people would have to tell me what is the legislature going to do over the next 5 years, and that would kind of dictate where we are going to be. I can tell you, however, the district has a strong track record of not going back to the voters and asking for lots of operational referendums. The last operational referendum we went for was in 2001, and it was for teacher compensation and technology. And so it's been almost a quarter of a century since the last time that we asked for an operating referendum.
You've provided listeners with a lot of information here, and I have a tough question. What happens if the referendum doesn't pass?
Yeah, I think that is a tough question, because we don't ever want to get to a point where people feel like they're being held hostage, or that we're saying, if you don't do this, we're going to do that. But there are some real realities that if we can't get help on the revenue side, and we continue to have the pressures on our budget, is that we're going to have to make some substantial cuts, and those can impact things like class sizes, like extracurriculars, like a lot of the things that people have come accustomed to expecting out of the school district. And so we would have to really sit down and go through with with our administrative team, with the board, and some community involvement as well, to say, here are the things that we're going to have to probably no longer offer or no longer do if we don't get the additional revenue. I know one of the things that the Hudson School District prides itself on is our class sizes. We have very good class sizes, especially at the elementary levels, especially compared to what you see on the other side of the river in Minnesota. And so all of those things would have to be in play as we try to balance our budget, because, as I said earlier, 80% of our budget is staffing. And so it's not as though we could just, cut the number of copies we buy or things along those lines. I mean, we would really have to look at staffing. And when we cut staffing, that has a direct impact on our programming and what we can offer kids and what we can offer families in our community.
Before we sign off, is there anything else you think the community needs to hear regarding the November 5th referendum?
The last operational referendum we went for was $8 million. How come now we're only going for $5 million? And that's a very valid question that somebody may have. And what we've done is we've gone back and we've tried to tighten things up and reduce our expenditures even more so that we wouldn't have to ask the community for as much money in this operating referendum. And so we want to make sure that that we're being prudent with the use of tax dollars and only asking for as much as we need. And so we will continue to kind of look at ways to cut and to be efficient with our spending, because even when you look at our budget projections, if those projections, there's a lot of assumptions in play there. If we continue to go down in student enrollment, we will have to make additional cuts. Those will come just because we're getting smaller, and so the revenue, the increased operating levy, is not going to handle that by itself. And so we will continue to make additional adjustments as needed based on our student enrollment, and we feel like we've done that for a long time. When we talk about being good stewards of tax dollars and where we have cut, in addition to the $1.9 million of cuts that we've talked about, 10 years ago we had 117 sections of elementary, which would be 117 different classrooms of elementary age kids from kindergarten to fifth grade. And currently this year we're at 94 sections. So we've already reduced 23 sections of elementary. We've reduced about 11 full-time staff members equivalent at the middle school. We have reduced about 6 equivalent at the high school. We've reduced administrators. We've reduced support staff. We've reduced teaching staff. We've reduced clerical staff and custodial staff. We've reduced across the board. So it's not as though everything is just being reduced by classroom teachers or things along those lines. We have made substantial reductions both at the district level, the building level, both at the classroom level, and also the administrative level. So I just want to make sure people understand that we will continue to adjust, and if the district continues to shrink, we will have fewer people. And we've demonstrated that over the last 10 years that we will make those adjustments. We don't just keep people on just to keep them on.
Thank you, Dr. Ouellette. For our listeners with additional questions, we invite you to send us an email at connections@hudsonraiders.org or join us for one of our community information meetings. Our first community meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 16th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Hudson High School. Additional information can be found on our website, hudsonraiders.org, under the Operational Referendum November 5th tab.